Our next session is going to be a panel discussion around training. And we've invited a few different organizations to join us that have been in AUD projects. They're all in different stages of the project. So we tried to get a little bit of all ends of the spectrum to share their experiences and their plans for training going forward. So joining us today on the panel will be Tim Taylor from Central Hudson, Ed White from Hydro One, Marty Palma from SBS is going to represent Energy Queensland for us today, so the time difference for them being able to join in the middle of the night. So we'll go ahead and kick that off. We're going to go in alphabetical order here, guys. So the first thing that I'd like to do is ask each of the different organizations, what was your initial thought process and plan going into your AUD project in terms of training and your approaches? Tim, I believe Central Hudson comes first in the alphabet, so if you'd like to start us off.
So yeah, we're a smaller utility. We serve approximately 300,000 electric customers. We have about 20 internal designers. We call them estimators at Central Hudson, and we probably have at any given time an additional 20 resources on the contract side. To be honest, we didn't put as much thought and effort into the training plan as we were developing AUD for Central Hudson. Not to say that we didn't plan, we just, in hindsight, we probably could have planned a lot better. Our initial approach was small group sessions, in person, and then obviously with the time frame and the times that we're in right now, we kind of ran into some hiccups with COVID, so I had to kind of peel back. Basic training started out with introductions to AUD, work order browser, the search capability, job linking, the change to GIS imports, etc. Running through just simple jobs, overhead transformer installs to services, simple gas services, just the basic stuff. Kind of the easy answer to that question.
Ed, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So at Hydro One, we're still in the development process for AUD, so we're kind of trying to get a plan together here for our end user training. Right now, the plan is to have some self-study training about 13 weeks before our end user training. At that point, we'll go into 1 week of end user training for every designer, and then to have some hypercare post go live is our plan for training. And we're going to be using the LMS system from SBS for our self-study training. It's been a very helpful tool so far.
Thanks, Ed. Marty, you want to go next?
Sure. From the Energy Queensland perspective, they are actually in end user training as we speak. Sessions started several weeks ago, and they have several more weeks of training still to go. Very large utility with 200 plus designers from both distribution and transmission design. So a very large set of customers to train, a lot of people to get trained, a lot of sessions that have been planned for that training. The approach that was taken was to start with the out-of-the-box concepts. So the out-of-the-box AUD training that's available, we started with that and stripped it down. One of the big challenges at Energy Queensland is the difference in terminology. There's slight terminology differences that are used than we see here in North America. So there was some initial getting over that hump of terminology differences, but we stripped down the base training to give a good core piece of functionality of how do we use AUD and why does AUD behave the way it does. And then from there, we developed out customized content in the form of all their training is instructor led, at least initially here. So PowerPoint presentations, speaker notes, all of that type of information with their custom content, as well as putting together some end-to-end exercises on the custom content, as well as doing the out-of-the-box, straight out-of-the-box base AUD training content all together as part of that class. So a lot of information packed into, you know, about a week-long session of training. But so far it's gone really well. A lot of in-flight demonstration too during the training sessions. And then eventually the plan is to move some of that to more e-learning type content, video content, that type of training. So that was the approach for EQL.
Marty, one of the follow-up questions I have in terms of EQL is they are moving into production, and also Tim, with your situation, how has your training approach affected adoption for the end users?
From EQL's standpoint, the information I have so far is that you know, it's a lot of excitement, a lot of positivity, you know, as the users are going through the training. They haven't rolled out live just yet, but they're not going to have, you know, I'm pretty sure the rollout solution is you know, everybody's switching over, you know, at one time, and the new system's going into production and use. So adoption is you pretty much have to adopt, because I believe the old systems are going to get brought down sometime in the near future. But I don't have exact information on that, but I believe that's the plan. So,
do you have any information in terms of preparedness of the staff? So I know it's more of a what's the right word, a compact version of the training. Do you know if they're feeling ready for the transition? Is there panic? Feel pretty comfortable in the situation?
That's a great question. I don't know for sure as far as panic level goes. I've not heard anything specifically. I think there's some pain points, you know, that they're working through, and where you know, there's some training updates happening, and some additional tips and trick sheets and work instruction type sheets being developed to help with the more complex type situations that they're running through. But in general, I believe you know, the system is not too far off from their previous design system. So I think the adoption rate has been pretty good so far. They do have some users that were not CAD users. So those users were a little further behind, and I believe they took them through like some basic AutoCAD training to start with prior to getting into any of this type of training. So they had an onboarding kind of program for users that had, you know, little to no experience with these types of tools, extra training that they provided for those users prior to this. But in all, I think it's so far it's been positive. But again, we haven't gone live yet, so not 100% sure that you know, how it's going to shake out once it actually does go live and they're using it for real after these training sessions. But so far, so good.
Thanks. Tim, can we come back to you and kind of go the same direction? With your initial approach and how things are rolling, how has your adoption for the end users been, and kind of their feelings going into the project, or as the project's moved forward?
Man, we're gonna start off with feelings, huh, Ryan? No, so our adoption rate right out of the gate at Central Hudson, we went live in mid-July of last year. Adoption rate was fairly low. Part of the problem being that we have a legacy mainframe system that was developed in-house over years and years and years. AUD was interfaced in a couple different spots there. Certain pieces of our current process kind of had to remain the way that they were, so we didn't necessarily have the option to just flip the switch and turn stuff off. Through the in-person training and shifting to Teams calls, we did a lot of hand-holding. you know, to Marty's point, we have some really good CAD users, and we have some, you know, very basic, or I would even dare say potentially subpar CAD users on the property and with our contract forces. So there was definitely some change there. You know, people were drawing in paper space and not using the model space, and you know, the whole idea and concept of importing features from GIS was kind of almost abstract or surreal to some people. They didn't really grasp the whole concept. I think we're probably, you know, trending in a positive note. I would say we're probably somewhere in the 35 to 50% adoption range at this point internally. And our contractors started the training process a little bit later. We had some access issues and getting AED deployed to them with hardware and permissions and whatnot. Most of them have a relatively positive stance on things. I think our bigger fight is the union employees here at Central Hudson that were used to doing it the old way and didn't really fully grasp the why behind what we were doing and why we were doing it. So it's been a lot better communication since the start. People are, you know, we're getting buy-in very slowly. Like I said, we're probably around, let's just say 40 to 45% adoption internally and trending in a better direction externally.
Thanks. So to follow on with that, Tim, what adjustments would you have, like hindsight's 2020, what adjustments would you have made to help with that adoption if there were any changes that you could see?
So I guess I have a couple answers. One, we developed and introduced a PDF training and reference manual. We didn't have it ready to go on day one though. So unfortunately we weren't able to share that volume of information with the users right out of the gate. We also used Camtasia software to create step-by-step training and reference videos for, you know, best practices for adding features or updating features, and also included some how-to type exercises. Yeah, I think those are two definite things I would have changed. Probably the sizing of our training groups, and also something that we adjusted along the way was we kind of moved our training to smaller groups, 1 or 2 people, 2 or 3 in some scenarios, and kind of grouped up users based on their CAD abilities first, and then their understanding of AED second.
One quick question on your videos. Are they just in a SharePoint repository where people can go and reference those videos as they go, or do you have a different platform for hosting those that they know to go check on?
So we have a specific file share server set up for our estimating team. Those videos all reside in a folder there. The intention is to get them out onto the company wiki and the training pages. We just haven't really gotten there yet. You know how utilities move, kind of slow and steady, but never really fast and furious.
Gotcha. Slow and steady wins the race, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim. So Ed, transition over to you. I know you guys are in the middle of your project and really kind of getting going. What has been the response in terms of your end users? And I know you've done kind of some warm-up training to get people a little more familiar with the product as you go. How's the overall response been from the team?
I would say in general, people seem to be very excited about the new program. Anytime we give them some content showing them how the new program is going to work, they seem to be responding fairly positively.
Have you found that like introducing them little by little has been beneficial, or do you feel like it's just kind of a drag along process, maybe group it together closer, or how's that gone so far?
I would say that would be like a mixed response. Some people like getting the slow drip feed of information. Others want to know, they want to jump in feet first, going to show me how the program works, let me play with it. So definitely mixed result there.
Tim and Marty both had mentioned this. Do you find a lack of CAD knowledge in your end users as well, or is everybody pretty up to speed in terms of CAD?
There's mixed there as well. Like there's some end users are excellent with CAD and some have very little experience. So we also put on a basic AutoCAD course for anyone who felt they needed some more training in AutoCAD. We did that a few months ago.
Was that one hosted on LMS as well, or is that an internal one that you've done?
That was an internal one that we did some in-person training.
So thanks, Ed. I think you guys have all touched on this a little bit in each of your responses, but as you look back and view your overall path, what are some of the major adjustments that you would have made or found beneficial along the way? Do
you want me to start, Ryan?
Yes, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. From EQL's perspective, you know, some additional things that they think they would change or add on to is doing more like short videos that go along with the training. There is some video content right now, but I think from both the trainer perspective and longer term goal of being able to do you know, self-paced user training instead of it always being instructor led, you know, that more where the demonstrations are happening by an instructor, you know, to have video content that goes along with that so that it could be easily converted into a self-paced type of class. And they would probably do a little bit more integration of the core content with their customized content. Like I said, there was some struggle initially with concepts as far as just terminology differences and those types of things. So, you know, where one term is used in North America and it's a different term in Australia, it was causing some issues to where they would probably update the entire content and maybe not use the out of the box quite as is. And then we developed some end-to-end exercises for them that were based off of some custom jobs or some common jobs that they do. So those exercises that they're walking through, you know, are taking them through, you know, EQL specific functionality, and they would like to see, you know, more exercises developed that, you know, are more inclusive of all their processes. You know, obviously it takes time to develop out that type of stuff and to understand where the true needs are for, you know, which things are harder for the user group to pick up versus which things are, you know, pretty straightforward. So I think we hit the mark pretty close as a starting point, but they definitely determined that, you know, more stuff, more coverage of different types of functionality is needed in some of those exercises. So.
Thanks, Marty. Tim, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. I would probably going to mirror a lot of what Marty just said. You know, one thing I think I guess did poorly or would change if we could do it all again would be, you know, more organized end user training before go live rather than waiting until go live. Unfortunately, we weren't able to staff our project the way that I would have liked, and therefore some of the training and change management stuff kind of took a backseat for longer than it should have. Would have definitely had more digital and paper content as well. You know, the training videos that I referenced before, the PDF version of the training and reference manual, any additional content that we could have shared with people before go live, I think would have gone a long way with you know, adoption and users understanding what AUD was capable of and what the expectations were with the software.
Thanks. Do you have like a platform in mind that would have helped you in that prep stage, or how would you have seen that communication coming to the end user?
Truthfully, Ryan, like we're still kind of working through some of this stuff, and you know, a weekly email type newsletter with tips and tricks or best practices. We have a pretty elaborate training folder at this point, considering where we are in the project. But I would have liked to have seen it where it is now, with a couple dozen training videos that everybody kind of had to finish before even touching the software. Before getting into any of the practical user training. I think Marty had referenced the lion's share of the work you do. Use those as your examples. If there's something that you have your users doing on a regular day-to-day basis, like that should be the stuff you're training them with. The off-the-cuff, everyday type jobs. As far as platforms, we don't necessarily have the tech here, and we're also biting off our customer information system is just recently went live with SAP. So staffing for IT projects and getting any sort of formalized training on any specific platform would be a lofty goal, I think, for us right now.
Thanks, Tim. Also, as you've mentioned a few different things, is this something that SBS would be able to provide for you, or would have been beneficial if SBS provided like a platform with the material, or is this something you felt needed to really been more of an internal type of thing?
So my 2 cents, I think when we were working with Aaron and the team, we looked through a lot of the SBS training materials that were out there. I think I had a temporary account at the time. A lot of really good general use of AUD. We have such what's the word I want to use? I'll say such an experienced workforce that's so used to doing things their way that the SBS default training videos and stuff, I guess I'll call them default videos. I didn't really feel like they were going to be as helpful as they could have been, keeping it in-house and making it very specific to our practices and procedures.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And coming back to you, I know you guys are in the middle of everything. So up to this point, what are some of the adjustments that you would have made that could have changed where you're at today, and maybe made things go a little smoother to this point?
So one thing I can think of is when we rolled out the AUD out of the box training, when we were getting everybody registered, it would have been, I think, beneficial to have clear communication with the end user staff about what's coming, what to expect, and as far as what email to expect in your inbox. We had an issue with a lot of people thinking it was a phishing campaign. So they deleted the emails off the bat, which caused a little bit more manual work for us and you as well, Ryan. But yeah, so that's something that I would do a little differently, is if we just give a bit clearer.
So to give a little more detail into what Ed's referencing is, they're using SBS's hosted LMS training site, and the invites came from kind of a generic looking Microsoft invite to get them onto the platform. So there definitely were a few resends in that group. So we had also invited SCE to join this panel in terms of sharing their experience, and unfortunately, due to schedules, we weren't able to get the SCE rep on, but Jim Lucas is on with us as well, and he's going to share a little bit of highlight in terms of what SCE's approach was and how things have gone there.
Hey gang, good to be talking with you again. So SCE was an extremely large training implementation, right? So SCE typically has about 800 internal users and on the order of 700 external contractors that are able to be inside of AUD on both distribution and sub-transmission side of design. So as you can imagine, training that many people is an undertaking to be, minimize it in the best way possible. To do that, SCE actually had a team of training professionals, training writers, working with the implementation team, starting probably about 9 months to a year from the end of the project. There was always a representative on the team, but I think they really dug in probably the last 6 to 9 months of the project for the most part to get our core training converted over. So I think it might have been Tim was saying that, they wish they had adapted some of the training better to what their folks wanted to see, or was hinting around about that. SCE really kind of tried to do that. They took our core training materials and, worked out some agreements with us in order to have access to the underlying, PowerPoints and documents and whatnot. And we're able to take those as the basis for their training, but they really extended them and used SCE specific screenshots and things like that to make it more relevant. I think some of the things they did well was trying to get the training team involved really early on, right? Way before you needed to train, and adapting everything to be more SCE specific. I think the things they struggled with a little bit is one, they planned for in-person training, but of course this was rolled out in the latter stages of last year when COVID was coming through. So of course they switched to all virtual, which is really hard to do. They did a good job as best I think you could do, training that many people virtually. But I think they wish they would have been able to do in person. I think that would have helped a little bit. And then there are, you probably have a bunch of designers that do one-pagers or like a one-page kind of overview of how to do something. I think now they've developed several one-pagers for things that, if you're going to do a small design of this, then you could go grab the one-pager and it'll give you the very, not high level, but not low level, the steps that you need to follow to do a design like this. I think they've developed several of those post-training and post-rollout. I think they probably would have wanted to do those a little earlier. But overall, yeah, a huge training undertaking, a pretty big team of trainers working on, customizing the training specific to them, all good things. A mix of training the end user, like they trained the designer, but then for the contractors, they kind of trained a couple representatives from each contract firm. So out of the 700 or so contractors that they have, users and users, they probably only trained around 80 to 100 of the main leads for those companies. So it was kind of a mix of end user and train the trainer going on as well. The videos helped, the customized training helped, and having a team dedicated to that really helped. Is that kind of what you're looking for, Ron?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So we're coming up on the top of our time. If there's any questions out there, please feel free to enter them in the question chat so we can get these answered. As we kind of wind up, is there anything specific any of our panel would like to share as kind of recommendations for others taking this path, or any kind of last nuggets that you'd like to share? from your experience? Marty, would you like to go first?
Sure. As far as, EQL is very similar to SCE in that a very large number of people needed to be trained. EQL has the luxury of having a dedicated, training department that's basically stayed on top of the project to ensure that all the training needs were getting met, not just from an AUD perspective for that solution, but they were rolling out several new solutions at the same time, including Vault, a new GIS system. So they had a very large training matrix that they went through. And just to reiterate Jim's response for SCE, being involved early, they were involved right from the get-go, became more and more involved, as the project went along. And I think that was beneficial, definitely having that early presence. Additionally, some things that helped quite a bit is, their SMEs or subject matter experts, were involved early on in the project, were heavily involved in the testing phases, and then those same SMEs became, a lot of them became the trainers. So they had a good jump and a good core understanding of the solution at that point to provide that training to their end users and have the confidence to stand in front of a classroom, right, and deliver this training because they knew the solution well enough at that point. And I think that goes a long way. Get your trainers, whoever you're IDing is, these are the people that we expect are going to help us deliver this training to our end users. Have them involved as early in the process as possible. Have them have other roles, like being testers for system integration tests or user acceptance testing, so that they get that additional clarity and familiarity with the system. I think that's gone a long way to really helping ramp up and execute the training as a whole. So.
Thanks, Marty. Tim, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that Marty just ended with is exactly what I wish we would have done a better job at. I'll start there. I would say also, just to add to it, make sure that you identify the processes that you have as a company, so that you can map out, best practices and standard operating procedures with the transition to AUD. For us, we don't have, Central Hudson doesn't have a lot of written down standard operating procedures for jobs. We have people that have taken notes through the years, and those notes get passed around, and one district does something one way and one district does it another way. And as we try to identify the best way to do it with AUD, we ran into a lot of headaches and heartaches throughout that process. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, definitely focus on having subject matter experts involved in, development, config, end user training, and then ultimately, I think Marty had alluded to them using their SMEs as their train the trainers. We could have definitely done a better job at that. So that's it.
Thank you. Ed, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks. Being that we haven't really gone through our training yet, I've taken down quite a few notes today for things to keep in mind, which has been great. And given me another 6 months, and I'll probably have some insight for you what I could change. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit advantageous to catch this in the earlier stages of the project, for sure.
Definitely.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all of our panel for joining. I really appreciate your time and your responses and the information you've been able to share. It doesn't look like we've gotten any questions in at this point, so we will move on with our agenda. One thing before we do progress, I will share SBS's plans in terms of training and materials provided. Many of you may be aware, some of you may not. We previously used to host all of our e-learning training on a site built on Moodle, and it got us to a certain point, but as we looked to expand and really grow the training materials that we provide and the resources that we would like to share with the customer base, we've migrated to a system called LMS 365. We are in the beginning stages of implementing this. We've got some of the courses posted, but we're continuing to migrate the rest of our courses over. Hope to have that up and running 100% here in the next few weeks here. But it's an effort that we're making. We really feel like training is a huge part of success for the AUD platform as well as our other products. And so we're trying to make that effort to help the end users and the customer base have the resources they need to be successful.